Right. So I have found the next question, and I don't thank me now, but it was pretty treacherous. I had to go to the cave of forbidden knowledge, all that. Thank me later. Um, so I'm just gonna re-explain real quick because I see some new faces in here. So, real quick, I'm going to pose a question. Once I pose that question, we're gonna go around the circle. Once we go around this circle, abiding by these rules behind me, we're going to open up, and these rules are: rule number 1, 2-minute rule. Try to keep your point under 2 minutes while going around the circle. Rule number 2, respect the circle, meaning don't try to argue with someone while they're trying to make their point in the circle. Rule number 3, ask them to guide me. If you want to talk about religion, you're welcome to. Just ask the group and make sure everyone's comfortable. Someone is still letting off fireworks. That's crazy. Uh, Rule number 4, respect when the topic is over me. If we're trying to move on with us. And rule number 5, shut up when needed, because needed is often. So, the question is, does tradition hold us back? Or, quote unquote, if you're an ancient man from the, what is it? The Mediterranean, keep our hubris in check.
Sorry, what was the last part?
Does it keep our hubris in check?
Oh, okay. Well, I guess, does tradition hold us back? Yes. Yes.
Dude, you skipped someone. Dude.
Oh, I apologize.
Right
Oh, I
here.
thought you pointed at me. I apologize. I apologize.
Right here. God damn it. Well, does it hold us back? I know. Can I quickly talk about religion, but not like talk about
Oh,
You can talk about culture, religion, but not actual beliefs. Okay, is anyone against me talking about religions? Because I don't know if this opens the God door or not.
No, you're good as far as
Go
I'm
for it.
concerned.
Okay, so
real talk.
I kind of see religions as sort of traditional type stuff, and that definitely holds us back in pursuit of knowledge and stuff and scientific ways. So definitely in that sense. That's not to say all traditions are bad though, or are bad practices. There's people who make wooden wheels for carts and stuff. That's a very old timely type of work, which we don't have a lot anymore, at least in the UK. So, there's very few people who still make them. And that's a traditional way of making them because it's always worked and it's good, solid craftsmanship. That's not holding us back. That's preserving a way of doing something. That's not, yeah, but that's all I gotta say because I don't know too much. Right, Mark.
All right. Well, I guess I said my answer before, but I guess my opinion is it does it does hold us back a little bit, and I would say specifically somewhat. I guess since traditions are culturally specific, it kind of holds us back from it kind of makes us a little bit tribal. It kind of I would see it as limiting people's tolerance for other people's traditions, I guess. But I guess I don't know how to articulate that. But I would say that it also limits people's creativity to make their own lifestyle.
All right, Louis.
I don't really have anything on this one. I'm gonna pass.
Alrighty, Ray.
I'm gonna pass also. I'll jump in later.
No problem. Katrina.
I agree that it does hold us back, and just kind of looking at kind of where the U.S. is right now, I feel like I could pull some examples from that, but just in general, it just seems like whenever people acknowledge that there's some sort of change that needs to be made, there's this fight between, but this is what we've always done, or this is how we've always thought, or what about the people that have done important things in the past? If we move forward, we change things, is that dishonoring those people? But it's kind of realistic that as a society, we change and grow as we learn, whether it has to do with like human rights or whether it has to do with technology or whether it has to do with diet. We know more now than we did, 50 years ago, even 20 years ago. It seems like when you know better, you should do better. But it seems like people's traditions that have been embedded in them for so long, it's hard to move away from that because it's kind of looked at as a negative thing, or as though you're discounting your tradition by moving forward in a positive way. So I think it does hold people back. Of course, there's things from the past that we should always bring with us, but if it doesn't fit with the current society, and if it doesn't fit with where where you feel like your beliefs and morals should be at this point in time, then you have to kind of let it go, So that's just what I think.
Right, Timon.
I think there's a two-part answer to this, and that is there is an egocentric part of tradition, and there's a rational side of if tradition holds us back. The egocentric side is what we personally in a family households are used to, brings us joy, brings us pleasure, with general cultures and traditions. But on the broader side of things, tradition is, in a way, like as someone said over here, tribal. It also segments us, and it separates us from other parts of the world, which stops the unity where we start having differences. And I think by holding us back means that we as the world eventually will come together. If you look at all the dystopian, well, I don't like dystopian, but let's say alien civilization type movies and utopian type movies, you never see, the Russians and the Greeks and the Americans. You just see as like a unity, the one world race where they all come together. I know I'm opening a can of worms here, but I think the less traditions that we incorporate into the world, the closer the world will become, and it'll become more globalized, and we'll unite together as one race.
All right. Natalia, do you know what's going on? Been here before?
Me? Oh, she. Yes.
No, that's okay. Teal Queen?
Hi, I'm Teal. Thank you for allowing me to be here. This is my first time. I saw that this topics was about metaphysics and philosophy, and I'm really big into metaphysics and philosophy. So, I'm looking at the real talk rules. So thank you. I'm grateful to be here.
So you don't know what's going on. Okay. For the people who joined, the question was, what was the question? Oh, does tradition hold us back or keep our hubris in check?
Okay, so the philosophical question is, does tradition hold us back, or does it
keep our hubris in check?
Or keep our hubris in check? Well, it's interesting. I think that tradition is kind of a way for culture and society, especially if I think of like ancient tradition or Jewish tradition that has kept a continuity or a certain culture together. So in that sense, it's like a collective OCD that we've all inherited, tradition. And does it it does keep us in check? Can it hold us back? I think that seeing what's happening in the world, especially in the United States, people saying that their tradition is being destroyed with certain monuments, then their heritage, then maybe this tradition has to be revisited, because it is holding people back, because they need to really look at different perspectives. I adhere to Ken Wilber's integral theory, looking at things at multiple perspectives and multiple dimensions. So I would say that both are true. It both holds us back, but it also keeps us in check. Thanks.
All right. Who's behind you? CSS? CCS, my bad.
Yes. I'm behind her. Okay, I'll move. All right. So talking about traditions, I believe some traditions do hold us back because when the tradition, so-called tradition forms, it was because the time being that formed that kind of tradition, or even the education they needed during the time. For example, the king wants to control their people, and they create some kind of tradition to make the people follow. At least that's what I believe that happened in China dynasty before. But some tradition was created because they want people to appreciate what happened, like Thanksgiving in United States. So before we define if traditions do hold us back or not, we need to realize what's behind the tradition, what forms the tradition. So we decide if we want to change it a little bit to fit the current time being, or we want to follow it in order to show the appreciation our ancestors showed before. For us, for nowadays, we still feel the appreciation for that. Yeah, so that's my opinion. So we need to realize what happened behind the tradition before we define it as holding us back or not. Yeah, that's it.
Alrighty. Dagger.
Hello. So, I agree with a lot of people's points so far, because I do believe that tradition is holding us back in a lot of different ways, because there's a lot of really archaic traditions that I see. Actually, I'm an American, so I see a lot of archaic traditions going on in America today, and I believe that those are definitely holding us back from being what the ideal America could be. And I also believe that they do, in some spots, keep our hubris in check, because there are some traditions, I can't think of anything right now, like traditional trades. I think somebody said something about trades earlier. I think traditional trades and things like that are things that need to be kept in practice, things that are keeping us humble in a way. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Alrighty. F.
So yeah, I kind of agree with what a lot of people have said already. Traditions do hold us back to some extent, but also they do keep our hubris in check. And I kind of think traditions are a bit like memes. If the tradition is no longer fit for purpose, it should gradually disappear. You know? For example, I'm not a Christian, but I think Christmas is a really nice pulse to the year. If a lot of dark and cold and so on, it's a great tradition, yeah? So I think that, and I would err on the side of keeping traditions rather than not, slightly, for those who want them, providing they're not restrictive. Right? As a Christmas is a good example. I'm not going to force anyone else to celebrate Christmas, right? I'm not being restrictive. Providing traditions aren't restrictive, I would err on the side of keeping them more than not. And the reason is, once you've lost them, you can't get them back. In chess, there's a sort of saying, pawns can never move backwards. Once you've made that change, you can't easily get it back. So if somebody said, I don't know, let's take a quite contentious example. The House of Lords in the United Kingdom is an outdated institution and we should get rid of it. Okay? I'm not sure where I would sit on that, but what I know is once you do it, you can't re-establish that thing. Right? So I think I would err on the side of caution around traditions. I would tend to preserve them as long as they're not being imposed and not being restrictive. So that's me.
Before we move on, I would just like to say, what kind of magic? Like, I was literally thinking, like, about like the House of Lords, and thinking, that's really weird that they kept that name and stuff like that. Like, you pulled that out of my brain, man. I was literally sitting here thinking
I'll
about that.
extend on that a little bit. I was actually rather worried, even though I would class myself as left liberal. I was rather worried about Jeremy Corbyn getting into power for reasons I won't go into. But I spent some time what's called the Inner Temple in London, which is an ancient legal thing, right? I went to visit someone there, a barrister, and I came away thinking there's this massive wealth of tradition, this store of knowledge. And if we ever had some kind of despotic government get in or whatever, right? We have all these checks and balances. I'm not that much in favour of the monarchy myself, but I probably would keep it simply because once you get rid of it, you can't get it back. So we have a lot of these checks and balances. I don't know in America as much. I think the Constitution is your checks and balances, right? Yeah? And is it really hard to change the Constitution?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Hasn't been
very
changed in
hard.
like, what,
So that's
30, 40 years?
in a sense your tradition, right? That's your tradition, yeah? And it's what, if you get, someone like Putin in power, it's what stops them going on forever. So I think they are very important, actually. My hand's doing some funny stuff. Oh, it's
That's
back.
one way to look at it, yeah, I guess. Depends on how you define tradition.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alrighty. My name's Jeff. Once again, damn you for making me say that.
Yeah, like when it comes to traditions, like there's some traditions that are just a bit of fun. Like I've said, like Christmas, like stuff like Christmas. Like it's just a bit of fun. It's just fun at the end of the year. Like, but like there's some traditions that I don't think that we should completely remove, but we shouldn't celebrate either. Like just keep them in our heads, like to learn from them. Like there's some, don't know. I can't really think of anything right now, but like we definitely we definitely should keep some traditions. Jesus Christ. And when we said about monarchy, I've said it's a bit of like a two-way thing, because on one hand, like we already have them, like there's no real point in that, but on the other hand, it's just there's literally no reason for it. Like we don't need it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could just say it's a tax burden or something.
I think that's a misconception, though. The immediate monarch and the immediate circle are a net economic benefit for the UK. That's a misconception. All the tourism money they bring in is massive. Sorry for stepping out of there, but that is a factual misconception.
Yeah, that's alright. I mean, you're not wrong. You're right. Well, that's all I really
This is
have
not
to
the
say, to be
first
honest.
time we tried to disestablish the monarchy on this event. This is like the third time?
Everyone should be allowed to keep a pet.
Mm. Who said that?
I don't
Who
really
said
have,
that?
I don't
We
really
have
have much else to say, to be honest.
Mm. All right, handsome guy.
Ravens, can you do the megaphone? I don't really feel like being up here.
Yeah, I've been doing it.
All right.
Handsome guy.
I got nothing. I'm still listening.
It looks like he's drinking a Slurpee.
I think he just said he was listening.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I'm listening.
Oh,
Yeah, actually, I was kind of scratching my chin. I was, just listening. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem.
You good.
Bobo.
So my main question is, like, tradition, do you mean societal or individual or groups or a section of area?
So whenever I ask a question, as many people know, it's totally how you interpret the question. If I was
Okay.
to add any, what's the word, any additional onto it, I would have already said it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's my first time here. When it comes to tradition, I think of it in many routes. And my number one thought is how people view it. And a lot of times how people view anything is, number one, feelings, and very last, thought. And by thought is I mean educating themselves on why and how they implement themselves into said subject. So if people don't like a certain thing, they implement themselves without even fully analyzing or learning about the subject. So if you don't like a tradition, you may not have any part of it. That might have nothing to do with you. So if I go to the Amazon and there are groups of people and the right of manhood is sticking your hand in gloves full of fire ants, that has nothing to do with me. That's on them. And if it doesn't affect them in a negative way and in a positive way, who am I to say anything about it? Okay? Depending on where you are in the world is only if it affects you not negatively of your feelings, but if it takes some form of right away from you. We have, like, and some people said America, we have traditions people don't like. To me, that's not enough to remove something. Is it negatively affecting you in the way that it takes away a right? And if it doesn't, then I don't feel like you should bother with it. Don't apply yourself into it. Don't be a part of it. You can always have a voice against it, but don't actively try to remove something because you don't like something. There are many things going on in the world today I don't like, but I don't get involved because it has nothing to do with me. But I voice my opinion, and through that might change it. But as a whole, and whatever the tradition or subject matter may be within those traditions, I let those people practice. I don't involve myself, especially negative against it. So if it's religious or political, or a holiday, or them going out and doing whatever said act to apply their tradition, if it's not affecting me and my rights, or if it's not affecting me negative in a way it would cause harm or anyone else harm, I think they should stay. I think it's a part, especially we're mammalian creatures. We form, especially packs, whatever groups those are, and we have those joining, bonding things. And those things are traditions. Those things can also be ideas and such. But the main thing, traditions are what keep those bonds together. So remove the ones you don't like from you, but I think be very careful when you do it to others, because those can be very important things. And that could be very detrimental not only to them, but to yourself in unforeseen ways. I think that's really the main thing. That's all I got to say.
All right, Sheldon.
At first I was going to pass, but given what the last speaker, it has sort of inspired me.
I'm having a hard time hearing this guy.
Give some bit of a response or addendum. The question, embedded in the question, is the implicit premise that traditions work antithetical to progress. And that's not necessarily the case. So I'm going to give two particular examples, which to piggyback after what Bobo, is it, had just spoke about. At my undergraduate institution, I lived in a residence hall, single gender residence hall, and it had traditions. It was the first residence hall on the university campus, and it was steeped in history and traditions, and they were fun. They were fun. Being a personal residence aside, bias aside. Over in the last decade or so, the traditions have been obliterated through the consequences of administrative actions and sort of transformation. It now sits as a gutted building that houses, it's another dorm. No longer a residence hall, it's a dorm. There's a distinction between the two as it is. My friend revisiting the area where we used to live made the observation, took a picture and sent a text to me, and he noticed there was a rainbow flag flying on the flagpoles. Not the flag of the university, not the flag of our residence hall, not the flag of the state or the university campus, but a rainbow flag. And the question I posed, one of the questions in relation to this is, I do not know if that flag would have been there if the traditions had continued. Possibly, quite possibly, but I don't know. I don't know. So I just toss that out there. The second example, because Bobo really sort of makes me think about this. I watched a movie last night, Midsommar, which came out last year, a horror film.
Oh,
It's a horror film. The at root of the film is this exercise, a performative of traditions, and the traditions manifest themselves in some very horrific ways.
Yeah.
But we, as the audience, are viewing the traditions from the perspective of someone outside. And what's interesting, when all is said and done, those practitioners of the traditions were not did not have an adverse effect on those outside of their community. It's only those who intrude into the community that might have some sort of consequences. But it's interesting that there is this sort of prejudice from the outsiders about the traditions that this commune practice, that they've been practicing for centuries on end. It's just food for thought that I toss in response to what was said previously. That is all. Thank you.
Alrighty. Gumball.
Hi guys.
This is awesome, by the way.
I see tradition as
I'm having a hard time hearing this guy.
There's a lot of subcultures in tradition, and basically, if you let's just bring up the example of if you're in a rave culture, right? In a rave culture, you go and dance with anyone you want. That's the way it works, and it doesn't mean anything, and it doesn't mean that you like them. You think maybe you find their energy fun, but that is a tradition of theirs, right? Dance with the person. It's okay. Don't worry about it. If you're in the metal community, throwing up I can't do it, but throwing up the devil horns means you support what they're doing or that you care about what they're doing. That's a culture and a tradition in itself. So culture is kind of interlaced in a bunch of subcultures. There's big culture, and then there's subculture. In big culture, in my opinion, is a problem. It's a problem. It's been a problem. It will be a problem. And until we figure out how to make everyone feel comfortable, it's going to be rough for a while. And we're seeing that right now. There's cultural change in big culture all the time. But in the smaller cultures, there's always these set of values that everybody knows about, but it's secretive. Nobody ever says, hey, this is what you do. Right? This is what you do. You're a metalhead. This is what you do. Or, hey, you're a raver. This is what you do. It's all implied. So until we can get to a level of a subculture, yeah. But just generally, that's what I think. I think this tradition that people speak of is interlaced in different communities, and it is negative and positive. But tradition brings us together, and we make our own tribes. The big traditions, some are great, some are bad, and you get to decide what you think is good and bad. But that's it. We can move on. Thanks, guys.
That's awesome.
All right, old stock.
Right, well, as you said, tradition is up to our own interpretation. So I see tradition as a direct function of us being a social animal. It is how we bond with our neighbours, how we strengthen our ties with our kin, with everyone around us. There's a difference between tradition and repeated behaviour. So let's say I go camping with the same friends in the same spot, same day every year because I want to bond with those people. I see that as tradition. When I get home from work, I sit in the same spot on the same couch and I put my feet up and I play the same game and I treat myself to a drink. That's not a tradition. That's a repeated behaviour. So, just to establish that difference. And tradition, like anything else, it's how we use it. I mean, some people might have thought it a bonding experience to go out and, let's say, the KKK, let's go out and beat up some black people. In a horrible way, that counts as a tradition, but, obviously it's a bad one. It's what we do with them. I mean, traditions I think you said it, Tiemann, that traditions separate us. But I think I'm the only person here from Ireland, yeah? I think so. How many of you people have gone to a pub on the 17th of March and gone, oh, hey, I'm Irish for a day, and took part in a parade, or, I mean, you all joined in on my tradition, my country's tradition. But it brings a sense of, a connection, maybe, a slight sense of connection, especially if you meet an Irish person in an Irish pub on St. Paddy's Day. You're going to say, hey, how's it going? You're going to feel that bit easier about staying alone, maybe. Or I've been in America for 4th of July. I had a fucking great time. So traditions are awesome. I mean, there's the Songkran Festival in Thailand. It's just literally water bomb festival. Your Tomato Fight Festival and your Bull Run Festival in Spain. Festivals are awesome when they're done right, people. So don't knock them.
I like it. I like what you
All
said
right,
about,
I'll pass it on.
I don't know. I like what you said about how you use their tradition, or what you do with it. That's pretty awesome.
Yes. I agree. Also, I'm drinking Jameson, so.
Hey, good man, you're going to have a hangover tomorrow.
It's gonna be good though.
All right, Popper.
I would like to challenge the lens that we are viewing this question from and the way we view tradition. The way this question was posed, it's more of a, well, we should either have more tradition or a bit of less tradition. And I think that's not a good way to view tradition because it exposes one of the biggest human biases, which is our tendency to view the bad as greater than the good, even when the good is disproportionately outpopulates the bad. We see that in the news. We only get bad news, but really there's a lot of good things happening in the world. And I think it is the same with tradition. We all have really disproportionately benefited from tradition. I mean, just the fact that we're here, we come here 2 days a week for 2 hours to talk about some of our favorite things. That's so awesome. And that's why I think you should look at it not from the lens of more or less. We should look at it from how should we treat tradition, how should we look at tradition, and how should we build on tradition. There are, of course, archaic traditions, especially in the United States, but we should instead discuss how how we reflect and how we build on our old traditions. Yeah, that's what I have.
I like that a lot.
All right.
That was awesome. Thank you.
Haramiko. Haramiko? Nico?
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. Say as you want it. So, greeting is from Finland, and I guess I came a bit late here, so I guess it was about tradition.
Yes. Does tradition hold us back or, what is it? Maintain our hubris?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Is that the question?
So,
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, so first thing that came to my mind about tradition was it's been quite many years, but first thing that came to my mind was the thing in Spain they used to have where they had this kind of festival about bulls. They're releasing the bulls to the streets, and after that, the people in Spain kind of ran away from the bulls, and the bulls are kind of agitated to the streets, and afterwards they are killed and stuff like that. And I guess nowadays Spanish people don't anymore do that as much, I think. I'm from Finland, so I don't really know, but that's the first thing that came to my mind. Is it always a good thing to kind of keep on going with your tradition if it's harmful to, let's say, to an animal or something like that? So that's the first thing that came to my mind.
Can I answer that, or can I?
Sure.
Well, once we open up.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
sure.
we're almost out. We're almost through the circle here.
Okay. So, yeah, traditions are both a mix of good and bad, no matter what it is. Like Harmiko is talking about the running of the bulls. Obviously, you're hurting the animals, but then also at the same time, the people who go through that, I assume, and come out the other side are going to have a hell of a lot more confidence than when they went in. So the thing is it possible that we take the entire thing, both good and bad, and evaluate it, no matter what it is? When I was younger, before I really understood where holidays came from or anything, Christmas. I love Christmas. We get presents. We're together with family. It's great. And then you realize, oh, no, it has religious associations. And then you say, oh, well, there are bad things about some religions, all these types of things. You're getting together with family. So here's the thing. Like, we've got to figure out what we focus on when we're talking about traditions. And we've got to figure out, are we, to use a phrase, throwing the baby out with the bathwater? Are you, if you get rid of one tradition, are you getting rid of all the positive aspects along with the negative? Or is there a way to split the difference and get rid of the negative while keeping the positive? I think that would be a great way to both move forward as a society with a lot of things and also respect our past. But people don't tend to ever think that way. They think either get rid of it all or keep everything and turn Amish. So I don't know.
That's real rich from you, man.
Yes, I do. Okay, for personal information, I am planning on buying some land and doing a little bit of gardening and farming and living a more traditional lifestyle. So, but at the same time, I would like to point out that I'm still going to have my computer. I'm still going to be connected to the internet, all these things. So there's no reason we can't do both. I'm literally pretty soon going to be the living example of that. So, yeah.
So you can get good internet in a rural area, yeah?
It depends on where you go. you gotta get the right hotspots. Anyway, I don't want to. This isn't internet accessibility hour, but yeah.
Really is what.
Roku.
All right.
Yes. Okay, I have to say a few things first. Americo, I think it's a really nice thing about that you said, but releasing the bull is really a way to make the society move forward really quickly. Just like that's, I guarantee that. Second thing, I think it was Tail. Tail, you brought a lot of good point earlier. She was saying that when you want to understand what a tradition is, you have to look where it comes from. Just one of the things that I can say is just like he said, Christmas. Christmas, before Christmas was set in December for the birth of the Christ, it was it was the winter solstice that was celebrated by people that were not Christian, and they hijacked that celebration to include the Christianity inside that day. So it's exactly the same day that the other one were trying to celebrate, and it's just by associating their religion to that normal harvesting celebration, and they kind of hijacked it and they pushed their own tradition toward the tradition of other, mixing it up, and just like it just took over, and now we talk about Christmas, but it's still just like have like some root in other culture before that. Another thing, I have so much stuff to say about that stuff. Let's say I have a tradition. I'll tell a small story. A daughter and her mother are cooking a ham. I think most people know that story. Every time her mother is cooking the ham, she's cutting off about like 2 inches of the ham off and put it in the oven. And the daughter just look at the part of the ham there and she's like saying, "Mommy, why do you cut off the part?" She's like, well, my mother always did that. And she say, well, why? So she phoned her mother, and the mother said, well, my grandmother always did that. So they phoned the grandmother, and the grandmother said, well, I was always cutting off 2 inches of the ham because the pan was too small. It went down as a tradition of always cutting off the thing, but the origin of why it was done was because of a constraint. So it's just like it became a tradition in the family, but it was not based on something that people will do. It was just based on something of one person did at one point and never explained why she was doing it, and everyone else did it. And I think it's something that can be applied to a lot of things. It's a person did on doing something good, that you think it's good, that you think it's a good idea, you will tend to to perpetuate it, and it might become a good tradition in your family. It's like celebrating a birthday of something. Just like I mean, just like you find it's funny that like do you know Talk Like a Pirate Day? Have you ever heard of that one? Just like at one point, someone decided that in September, Talk Like a Pirate Day would be something, and they just started to spread that. And everyone that say that's a good idea, it's silly, but it's a good idea, and they just join in. And at the beginning, I think it was like 10 years ago or so, they started as a small group of like 10, 20 people, and today it's like there's millions of people that just like doing it all around the world and just like posting their pictures and everything. There's a group online and everything. So it really is, if it's a good idea, if it's a good thing, it's easier for other people to do it. It's like today, we don't tend to sacrifice virgin if a volcano erupts. We try to stop that a little bit, lately at least. Well, we don't do it as often as we used to. Or just like, the firstborn child sacrificed to the devil. I think there's still people doing it, but I don't think it's a good idea. It's like, I'm glad it's not catching up. Okay? You see what I mean? It's like the good idea tend to spread and bring joy to people. The bad idea to die more. It's like, for sure, some people try to keep bad one that they like as alive as they can, but it's just like, if the society refuses those things, it's easier to die off. That's what I say. Okay?
Okay, so now it's time where we open up, where if you haven't got the opportunity to speak, or you want to agree, disagree, try, ask someone to ritual combat, now is your time. We're not going to do the raise hand function. Just try to, get out there first, and yeah, like Ev is doing, let me see you, and then we'll amplify you, so we don't get people speaking over.
So I wanted to sort of agree with Roku in one way. Yeah, I think I think traditions are like slow memes, right? They evolve, they change.
Memes are tradition, yes.
Yeah, they're slow memes, right? They're not rapid.
Yes.
They're slow memes. And one of the things I noticed, broadly but not totally, is when we were talking about the traditions of state, people from the old world traditions of state, I'm broadly meaning Europe, from people around here, people weren't saying they need changing, right? But the American traditions of state, people are saying, well, maybe there's a few things wrong. That's what I thought I was hearing, right? So maybe, and this is a bit inflammatory, but maybe America is still too young a country to have evolved out its bad memes.
Get them, boys!
I see that.
No. But I mean, I think Europe got some bad ones to evolve out, don't get me wrong. But, yeah.
Yeah, they fought for some.
Fan of everything, we are still toddlers.
But well, like I say, well, they fought against
The most
some
well-armed
bad
toddlers in the
idea.
world.
It's like America, they fought against some idea they decided were bad, so they can get their own idea in. It's just like they tried to split themselves from Britain, from the royalty, so they can have their own government, their own thing. So they had they decided to go against the old tradition to break the rule and create their own. So now they have the constitution instead of having the royalty.
My point is, although I think the founding fathers did a brilliant job with the Constitution, it maybe takes many hundred years before you become settled. And even then, you're never settled.
Yes.
Maybe you just change more slowly, you know?
And in a way, it's like what I've kind of realized from this conversation is like what traditions are is just kind of a psychological process of society responding to the cyclical nature of life and wanting to pass along, values in that way. And so it depends really on the culture and if the culture is trying to perpetuate good activities. And so I guess really in that way, and in that way it made me think, oh, well, it's natural. It's a healthy thing then, right? But then I came back around and I was like, but that means that's going to perpetuate bad things too. So in a way, those things are perpetuated by those traditions, like for instance, statues that are super offensive to people that are, now considered by everybody to be equal, And so it just seems a little bit like that just, it's unavoidable to have traditions. So I guess to say that they're all the way bad is a little bit short-sighted. But I do think that there is good and bad that come from them for sure. You guys changed my mind a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. And that's why it's just like you have to be careful when you talk about, well, I'm not talking about you, but just like when you look at something that is a tradition, of course, if you focus only on the bad thing, you'll always find bad thing on anything. It's like if you say like Christmas, like Christmas, well, it's come from Christianity, and Christianity did the crusade, and crusade murdered thousands of people. Okay, more than thousands, but just like you get my point. Just like, but Christmas always it's not the murder of 10,000 million of people. It's the joy of the birth of the Christ and the family reunion and everything. There is good in there. We're not celebrating the murder of the other guy, but if you look only at the bad, you'll always find bad. You have to be able to look at everything and see if, in average, does it bring more joy or more or hurt more. If it hurts more. Yeah, it's just like if it hurts more, we want to dismiss it. If it's bring also joy, you have to choose. It's not just looking at one coin. It's a flip side both. So it's
Can I respond to that?
Yeah, sure, go for it. Sorry, I'm talking too much.
Oh, you're good. You're good. I do the same thing. I was just wondering though. I mean, I agree. The thing is like, it's what's that phrase? Hindsight is 20/20. Like, there's no way to know.
It's too soon.
Yeah, there's no way to know whether a tradition, like you were saying, is overall good or bad until you give
There's
it
no
enough
metric.
time. But how much is that quote unquote enough time? Nobody knows because there is no enough. That's a that's a illusion as well.
Yeah.
So like there's
But I think
like for
sometimes
example,
Can we get some examples of bad traditions? Because we're talking a lot about bad traditions.
can I do the thing,
I'd like to just
Ravens?
offer something.
I can think of some bad traditions.
Bring up the
Oh, yeah.
the hot button issue that we're all talking
Mhm.
around, even though I'm usually the person that wouldn't do that.
No.
What?
Yeah,
what do you
let's
think?
hear it. If it's the same
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's the Christian one.
Okay.
The
Is it the
religious
Confederate
thing.
flag?
Is it the
Well, it's the statue thing.
Yeah,
or
you
the
could
Confederate
lump.
flag.
I think
Lump
someone
it.
hit the head on the nail on that one. I don't think we're dancing around it.
Yeah, but we haven't really done the whole discussion on it. So
Right.
I would say like the two viewpoints that I hear, and someone who hears other things can correct me, is mainly on one side, people are saying, we're glorifying people that did bad things, even though that really what you're glorifying is not that part of them. You're glorifying a part of them, not the whole person. But then the other side of things, people are saying, you're destroying history is what people say, although it's like whenever I rip a piece of wallpaper, I'm destroying history because like technically that wallpaper is history. Like that's very granular. It depends on what you're referencing when you say history.
Right.
But
But what's tradition? What's the traditional
It goes
aspect
back-
of a statue? I mean, if the statue is
So-
just there, what's the traditional
it's the
aspect?
So they're generals of the
there's a
Confederate
difference
Army.
between
They're
I
I know, but I
Confederate.
mean, someone erected
Yeah.
a statue for whatever reason. That was an act.
They were built during
Yes,
the civil rights era in the 60s, way after the war, and it was to be
Yeah,
offensive to black
but it wasn't a
Yeah,
repetitive
I
act,
know,
a
but
celebration or
this isn't a
something. It was a
tradition.
one-time
This isn't a
erection of a
tradition.
one.
I created
You know what I mean?
chaos. I'm sorry.
Right, but I mean, it's almost like the
A tradition
it's like
is
if the-
usually repeated.
It's like if they
All
kept
right,
the Nazi statues in Germany.
Relax. One person at a time.
Can I?
It's not that bad to get spoken over. I promise. You can just take a breath.
Okay, I want to add something if I could. So this is also amazing, by the way. It's my first time in this place, and some really great points of view, and I appreciate everybody's. Even this robot guy over here, he's great.
Yeah.
I think
he was talking about me.
that's right. It's totally right. So I think we've been talking a lot about intentions and what the intentions are, which is one thing. So if you're hurt, if your intention is to hurt somebody, that's not good. Now, that I think where it gets difficult, at least for me personally, is when your intention is to carry on something that you said. I thought the greatest point about the ham, slicing off the ham, and you're just carrying on a tradition. Your intention is just to carry on a tradition of your family, and it's something that you know, and it's personal to you. No bad intentions. But the other part of this is the history of the tradition, and there's some other good examples of Christianity that you brought up, and it was there's a lot of good lessons. I was brought up Roman Catholic, and there was a lot of good things, but there was also some terrible, weird things that I didn't like also, right? So it's the intention of carrying on a tradition, and it's also the history of it. And I don't know what the line is. It's tough. The one that you brought up about the statues, to me, it's the Confederate flag, and for me, it means something really negative, almost evil, right? But I dated a girl in college who said, the South will rise again, and I pulled the car over and let her out, of course. But she was that was just something that she said, and for her it was like, my grandpa's cool, is what she was saying. Like, my grandpa's a cool dude that I like.
Right, I hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, and so for me, I think it's about intention of the tradition, and making sure you're not hurting somebody. and then figuring out, like, trying to learn as much as you can about the history of it, and then being really open about what you like or don't like, and maybe like maybe changing it and cutting those bad parts out.
Certainly.
I agree. I just want to add one thing. Just it's the tearing down of the statue that I see. But I'm Canadian. It's just like I just want to point it out. Just like I'm not American. I'm seeing it from an outside thing. I don't have like the same feeling when I see the statue as you do, because you were part of that story and everything. But just like from my point of view, when I see someone tear down a statue, I see a monument that was done by someone. It's like it was a piece of art that's just like being torn down. It's like it's not the same thing as seeing like oppression being.
So,
it's not
Rocco, how did you feel when the statue of Saddam Hussein was torn down?
Right.
Sorry?
How did you feel when the statue of Saddam Hussein was torn down?
Thank you.
That's
I was
right.
gonna
Just
say
a
the
piece
same.
of art.
Right.
I know.
Hold on. Let's hear the answer.
It was a nice piece of art, but just like I understand how people feel when they tear down. But just like when I see Saddam Hussein, for sure, it's like it's the representation of the leader itself. It's like he's the guy ordering the thing. When I see the general, I don't know that guy as much as you guys do. That's what I'm talking about. It's just like I don't know what the guy did. Okay,
Can
but
I
it's just
bring up the example?
Well, what was the
to me
traditional aspect
that
of
is
tearing
the
down?
most-
If there was any.
Yeah, just like the only thing I wanted to say is just instead of being torn down, just like they should be kept at one point. I know they're bad people. I know they were opposition to the American, but it's just like putting them in the museum so they can still be remembered as the bad guy instead of destroying them totally.
Right.
It just, as an artist, I don't like that. But just like I totally understand what you mean with the Saddam Hussein, or just
Well,
like
how
of course
about
if
all of
Hitler.
Syria that has been destroyed.
But here's the
All of the
thing, though.
history
That's
of
a more
Mesopotamia.
clear-cut example. I think the like, for example, what pops in my head is Francis Scott Key. You know, the guy made the Star Spangled Banner. So, like, but the problem is, well, now I don't know the whole story. Isn't the reason they're trying to tear that down is that he owned slaves? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think
there were some. Okay.
There was
I knew
actually
there was
some racial. There was actually some racial, like, there was actually racist stuff in the Star Spangled Banner that they took out.
Right. So, but my point is that if you have
That's my question.
a,
Does any American in this room love our country?
okay, can I?
I don't see anybody in here.
I love the multiplicitousness
The statues
of our
stand for
country.
our history of our country.
They
They don't stand for slavery or
No, it was a different
racism.
country. The Confederates weren't
Okay,
American.
I've had it
the
with
point
you
I
guys.
was
You
The
really
Confederates
pissed
are
me
not
the fuck
American.
off.
I love you, Roxanne. You're my
Jesus.
friend.
This is awesome.
Hang on.
They were sworn enemies of America.
We open up the big.
All right.
We open up a big thing there. Like,
Can
it's a
I,
big.
can I finish my sentence before you
Yeah,
guys
yeah,
rip
sorry.
each other's heads off and demonstrate
Well, she's
that
just crazy. We
humanity
just had to hear
cannot
that.
hold themselves together? Okay.
Yeah, let's hear it.
All right. So my
Stay
point
in the
was,
room. And don't call people crazy, please.
All right, I want to.
My bad.
my
My bad.
point
Oh,
point
no.
was,
Where'd you go?
and
Please, everyone, please. Thank you. Just like go middle.
thank you. And
You get
I know I
Victor
talk
leave.
a lot. You guys can respond as soon as I'm done, and I'll shut up. Actually, I have to go eat food anyway. But my point was that if there was ever a muddled example, it would be that, because he created the Star Spangled Banner, but then there were also some very negative things about his history. So if you tear it down, you're tearing down both the positive and the negative things. But then also, is the opposite also true? If you're leaving it up, are you glorifying the negative aspects. Nobody knows because two people can look at that statue and see two totally different things. One person looks at that statue and sees a glorification of racism, etc. The other person looks at that statue and sees a symbol of freedom and all this stuff. So my entire point is that there's no unified example on what these things represent because they represent different things, different people. I saw another crazy example is somebody sprayed graffiti on the statue of Abraham Lincoln. I saw a picture of that. The thing is like, if there was anybody not to spray graffiti on, it would be the dude that abolished slavery.
Right.
Come on now.
Right.
But these are symbolic actions. These
But
are nothing to
he
do with
was
tradition.
also-
Taking down the statue is symbolic
true. I
action.
think it's-
He was
Spraying graffiti on it is symbolic action.
Right. So like,
It's not
I just
tradition.
don't get it. I don't get like, but then these other examples with Confederate stuff, that's a little more clear, right? So it depends on. It's a whole mixed bag, and everyone's acting like it's black and white. Okay.
Yeah, no, you're right. 100%.
Rant over.
Well, I think that was a long-winded way of saying it's subjective.
He said black and white.
But
Oh my gosh, she did.
Like I say, like, one thing that I can say is just, does having
Darn it.
Nazi costume inside a museum, is it promoting Nazism?
I've been to
Because
it
it is.
Holocaust Museum in
If-
New York, and I didn't.
Yeah, exactly. An Holocaust museum have like all the stuff from the Nazi army, the symbol, the graphics, and everything. Is it still considered as Nazism because it's there
Depends
and
how
it's
you present
promoting?
it.
Exactly.
If there's a big plaque saying Nazi heroes for this uniform, well then yeah, it's probably
Does anybody have any amazing traditions that would be like that everyone should do?
Birthdays.
Yeah, Christmas might be one.
Birthday, yeah.
Birthdays. Everyone should celebrate birthdays.
And New
Birthdays is good.
Oh, New Year.
I like-
New Year. I think New Year is good. I like celebrating
Yeah,
New
yeah,
Year.
New Year's
and
is
everyone
good.
have it.
And birthdays,
Go ahead.
weddings.
Somehow. Not
Weddings are
everyone
good.
have it. Yeah, pretty much it. Almost.
But hey, how about
I think Chinese New Year is like
what does everybody think about
20
Bill
days later.
Cosby?
Bill Cosby.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Do you want
Are
to
we-
celebrate Bill
I
Cosby?
mean, no, seriously.
Okay,
What
this
do we
is
think
obviously
about
going to
him?
go into chaos,
Finance
but also
Simpson.
I'm hungry, so I'm going to go eat. See you guys. Have a
See you,
good
dude.
Yeah, see you.
Awesome talking to you,
It was
man.
nice
Thanks.
to talk with you. Thanks
Yeah,
again.
Speaking
yeah,
of
it
that, actually, hold on.
Let's come back
Oh, he's
to
back. He's
conversation.
coming back in.
But you know, we
Time out.
You know, if it's too bad,
It's over.
you can't just-
We're done.
You can't just.
Ending the event here. We're running out of time. We have to leave. We have to organize some stuff. So, right before I leave, I'd just like to aid your attention. You're welcome to stay in this space and continue your conversation. It will be open for another like 7 minutes. But if you would like to aid your attention to the side of the room in the back of the room, you can find our YouTube channel, which is the recording of this and the recordings of past podcasts and the Side Talkers podcast will be uploaded on. You can find our Spotify, which the auto recording version will be on. Plus, we're also on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, etc., anywhere you really find your podcast. You can find our Discord, which you follow that Discord, you'll be added to our server. And once you're added to our server, you can post questions that we're going to ask in the event, ask questions, come up with ideas, chat with us, and on our Twitter, which you can DM us and see announcements and upcoming events. So, with that done, adios.